Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a little sculpting session. I thought it'd be fun just to record myself working on this random character bust here and then provide some commentary on it. I know it's not the best, I'm not a very good artist, but I hope maybe there are a couple helpful tips for anybody that is new to the program and wanting to get into sculpting. The first 30 minutes or so of the video are more tutorial-like. I try to take it slow and explain what it is that I'm doing in detail. And then the last 30 minutes are more of a time lapse with just some general commentary. I want to add before we get started, I do have a built-in Blender add-on called Add Mesh Extra Objects activated. So you just have to go up to your Edit Preferences menu, and then on the Add-ons menu, search for Extra, and then you can tick the box beside Extra Objects. And then also in the editing tab under new objects, I have align to view. You might have it set to world, which is the default, I believe. This is just a personal preference of mine. Okay, so just to get started in the viewport, Shift A, and then under mesh, you should have a new option there called round cube if you didn't already have it activated. And then over on the left here, you're going to have a number of different operator presets available to you under the pull down menu. Capsule, clay bar, cube. The one that I find particularly useful, especially when it comes to sculpting, is the round cube option. So when you select that, to get the more kind of spherical look, you're going to want to increase the radius to 1. And then under divisions, for the arc, I like to increase it to 16. Kind of gives a good malleability to start the sculpt off. Okay, then I also like to scale up about 5 or 6 times. It kind of makes working with the Dyn Topo resolution a little bit easier. And then I like to Control A, reset all transforms, and that will reset the scale from 5 back to 1. It's usually a pretty good idea to keep your scale uniform and the same throughout your model. It helps with making sure that lighting and texturing is more consistent. Now we're just going over into the Sculpt mode. I have a couple additional viewports that I've added and saved to my preferences, so if you want to just go up to the corner, you'll see your cursor turn into a couple crosshairs. You can click and drag. It should create a new viewport for you. I use these for the front and side view. It can be helpful when sculpting to get a different view live. Now I'm going to start off with the elastic deform brush. I have the G hotkey set to that. I changed it in my preferences. It may be grab for you. Grab and elastic deform work very similarly. I just prefer to use the elastic deform. It's a little bit more of a nuanced thing, but in either way, you're going to want to shape the sphere into kind of a bean. Make sure your symmetry is on. It should be on by default. I try to keep symmetry on as long as I possibly can till the very end when I might be changing the expression of the face. I'm at side view by pressing 3 on the numpad and then flattening out the face. And there you should have a general shape like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go up to the Dyn Topo menu up on the top. I'm going to change the detail method to constant detail, and then the resolution I'm going to increase to about 6. Okay, so now let's start kind of blocking out the main parts of the head. I'm going to start with the eyes. Generally, you want them kind of in the middle of the head. And using the clay strips brush, I'm going to press Control, and this is going to create a negative or opposite effect of what the default brush does. And in this case, it's going to dig a hole for us a little bit here to make the eye sockets. You can press Shift F to change the pressure or strength of the brush. I am using a pen tablet here, but if you're using a mouse, this particular shortcut is very handy. Okay, staying with the same clay strips brush. I'm not going to press Control this time, and you're going to see the default setting. It's going to lay some clay down. So right now, under this method, you are adding some new topology to the top of the sphere. Okay, so I'm going to go for a stylized look, so I have quite thick brows. Same brush, now I'm going to hold Control again, and you can see I'm going to dig out part of the nose bridge there. And then same brush. Okay, and then with the clay strips brush, I'm just going to lay some more geometry down just to make the kind of pointier part of the nose bridge. And then now I'm going to press Control again. So same brush, clay strips brush, holding Control, we're going to dig out the part of the nose where the septum is, or the bulbous part. Here I'm going to dig out the little kind of dip in the top lip, the lip dip. And then here laying some more geometry down just for the lips. Keeping it really rough right now. Not going to add any detail. Okay, and down below, let's add some geometry for the chin. Same brush, I'm holding Control, and I'm going to dig out kind of where the cheeks will be. I'm going to go for a more angular look with the character, more stylized. And then now, some more geometry for the cheekbones. I'm basically creating a rough, kind of cartoony skull. And now I'm just doing straight back. It's going to be where I'm going to put my ear. I'm going to form the kind of indentation of the skull. And now a little bit for the forehead. Okay, so Shift A again and round cube. We're going to make the bulbous part of the nose. Now I'm just going to place it into the socket that we carved out just a couple minutes ago. And then now changing back to the elastic deform brush, I'm going to just kind of pull it into the shape that I want. Lots of pulling and prodding here. Pushing in to kind of form that connection with the bridge of the nose, then pulling out the nostrils, keeping everything again pretty loose and rough. Now I'm going to switch to the Sculpt Draw brush up on the top left there, and then again holding Control to get the opposite effect of the given brush. I'm going to use it to kind of dig out a hole. I find that the Sculpt Draw brush is a little bit more kind of aggressive in its digging ability, so sometimes I like to use it instead of the clay strips brush. Okay, so we have some gnarly nostrils there. Going back to the elastic deform or grab brush and just kind of playing around with the shape some more. This will be up to you and how you want your character to look. I got a pretty big nose, so I like to do big noses. Okay, so that's looking pretty good for now. I'm going to go up to top view by pressing 7 on the numpad. I'm going to add another rounded cube, but this time I'm going to use one of the operator presets that I was talking about before. I'm going to pick the capsule option. I'm going to scale up, and you can see over on the left there, it's kind of a pill shape. And this is going to be our neck. So just moving into place, rotating into place. I'm trying to name things properly, as you may notice on the right. Things can get pretty hairy when you end up with round cube 67 after half an hour of sculpting. So I'd recommend trying to rename as you go. Adding another rounded cube. This is going to form the torso. Again, try to remember to keep the scale uniform throughout your model by just using Control A and resetting all transforms. More shaping with the grab brush or elastic deform. While in Sculpt mode, you can move geometry by clicking the little arrow icon there and pulling on the axis handles. Add another rounded cube. This is going to be our shoulder. Again, Control A, all transforms. This is actually particularly useful when you want to apply a mirror modifier. If you don't, you may get weird results depending on where the origin of the object is. Okay, so some more renaming, keeping the file nice and neat and organized. Now going to side view, I'm going to add a cylinder. This is going to be our ear. Quick tip, Alt-Z will allow you to toggle the X-ray mode. You can click there up on the top right, but I find Alt-Z is a little bit quicker. Particularly useful when you have an object inside of another one or behind that you can't see. Generally, the tops of the ears want to be in line with the tops of the eyes. I'm not an anatomy expert, but it's kind of a general rule of thumb. This guy's ears are probably a little bit too low, but close enough. Again, I added a mirror modifier. Now going over into Sculpt Mode. I'm going to hit / on the numpad to go into isolation mode. Then up top, I'm going to go into Dyn Topo mode again. And then I'm going to click on Detail Flood Fill. This is going to flood the entire mesh at the resolution that you have set. Makes it a little bit easier to sculpt. And for the ear, I want to turn off the symmetry. So with any brush selected, by holding Shift, you get the smooth brush. It's very handy. So you can see I have the elastic deform brush selected, but I'm actually smoothing. You can have the inflate brush or the clay strips brush or the blob brush. If you hold Shift, you'll get the smooth function. Again, really handy, a nice shortcut to have. Now I'm using the Sculpt Draw brush to do some more digging for the kind of well of the ear. I'm going to keep things pretty rough here, not too detailed. Again, I'm not a very good artist, so I try to keep things kind of more cartoony and simple. And especially at this stage, just blocking things out, getting general shapes in. Okay, you can see here I am controlling Z like a madman. The max amount of undo actions by default is 30. And I use them all. And that's because up on the top right you can see that my symmetry is off. And so I had sculpted for a few minutes not realizing that. So just a little handy tip. Don't be like me. Turn symmetry on. So back again, I'm just using the clay strips brush to form the back of the skull. Kind of underneath the jawline. And now holding Shift again, getting that smooth brush function. Just going to smooth everything out. Looking a little better now. Now over to object mode, Shift A, we're going to add in a UV sphere this time. This is going to form the eye for us. Then again, / on the numpad to go into isolation mode. I'm going to select the middle vertex and then Alt left click the first ring there. I'm going to turn on proportional editing by pressing O on my keyboard, or you can turn it on by pressing up at the top there. And then G and then Y. And then with proportional editing, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to kind of play with the area of influence. And I'm going to do it so that the third ring there, I want it to kind of stay still as I move the middle vertex. So this is going to create the kind of well for the iris. Then now I'm going to select that middle vertex and press X to delete. Then Alt left click on that first ring, E and then Y to extrude back, F to create a face, and then I to inset. And that's kind of a general shape of a kind of stylized eye. I do go a little bit more in depth in my texture painting an eye tutorial if you wanted to check that out. Then we're going to shade smooth in the object menu. And then over on the right in the modifier panel, we'll add a subdivision surface modifier. So tabbing into edit mode, you can Control R to add some edge loops to kind of tighten things up. The edge of the iris you can see here. Around the pupil. So that's looking okay for now. Now I'm going to add in a rounded cube, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger than our eyeball. And this is going to form the kind of shinier part of the eye in the cornea. I'm going to select that middle vertex there, and I'm going to keep proportional editing on, and then G and then Y. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. The cornea is a little bit pointy. It's football shaped a little bit. So this kind of adds a touch of realism. It's not particularly anatomically correct, but gives a half decent result. Okay, so that's our cornea. We have our eyeball and then our eye cornea. And then finally I'm going to add another rounded cube. I'm going to turn down the divisions to 8. We don't need too many here. And these are going to form our eyelids. So I'm going to make them quite a bit bigger than the cornea that we just made. Tab into edit mode. Alt left click the middle ring there of vertices, and then X to delete. Now I'm going to Alt left click the ring of vertices here, and then S and then Z, but you'll notice I have proportional editing on still. You're going to want to turn that off. Okay, so turning that off, we'll try again. Alt left click, and then press S and then Z to constrain to the Z axis, and then you can see up on the top left the scale. Pull towards the center until the scale goes to 0. And this will just make sure all the vertices are on the same Z-axis plane. Okay, again, pulling until the scale is at 0. You're going to want to hold Control there, and it will help snap to 0 for you. And then now, creating a face by pressing F and then I to inset. And then I'm going to press Shift R to repeat the last operation. In this instance, it's the inset. Kind of a handy little trick there. Now again, shade smooth, and then adding a subdivision surface modifier. I have these actually added to my quick favorites menu, just so I can access them a little bit quicker. Renaming those eyelids. So I'm going to actually split these two lids here. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select a vertex here on the top. And then I'm going to press L to select all the connected vertices. And then press P and then select selection. And then that will make it a separate mesh. And then I'm going to rename eyelid top and eyelid bottom. And this just makes it a little bit easier when we do the proportional editing right here to add a curvature to the lid. So Alt left click on this row of vertices, and then with proportional editing still on, I'm going to press G and then Z. And then with my scroll wheel, I'm going to make the area of influence quite large, such that the lid is kind of got this natural kind of smooth curve to it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom lid. Alt left click, G and then Z, and then pull down just so you have a slight kind of curvature there. And then now I'm just going to pull them into place so that they're a little bit closer and kind of line up. Tabbing into edit mode, A to select all, and then R and then X to constrain to that axis. And then you can rotate such that they kind of meet at the corners there. It's kind of an easy way to get a stylized eye relatively quickly. So that looks half decent. I'm going to shift select the eye objects. I'm going to move them into place here. Place them right into the socket we made right at the start. You can really play around with the look here. Wide set eyes, close. You can make them large or small. I'm going to Control A and select all transforms. That's going to apply to all the selected objects. And then I'm going to go over to the modifier panel and add a mirror modifier. You're going to notice that it only actually applies to the eyeball, which was the first object we picked of the group. So if you want to apply the mirror modifier to all of them, you can press Control L and then in the pop-up menu there, select modifiers. Okay, so I like to create just a separate collection called backup. And I'm just going to create a duplicate of my collection called main and sneak them in there. I have it so that they do not show in the viewport or in the final render. And I'm doing this because I'm about to apply a Boolean modifier to our objects. And this is a little bit destructive in that you can't really undo it. So it's always nice to kind of have a backup just in case things go a little wonky on you. I do use a built-in Blender add-on called Bool Tool. You can go up to the Edit Preferences menu and enact that. So we're going to shift select all the different meshes we have, the shoulder, the chest, the neck, the nose, the ear, and the head. And then press Control plus on the numpad, and you're going to see over on the right a Boolean union modifier has been automatically added to all these selected objects. This is the Bool Tool add-on at work. And then you're going to want to press Apply All. So this add-on is really handy. It automatically hides them from being rendered as well. Really increases the efficiency of your workflow, so I'd highly recommend using it. You could do it manually just by adding a Boolean union modifier yourself to each of the objects, but for me it's a no-brainer. Okay, so you can see now we have all the meshes that were separate before are now one. So tabbing into Sculpt Mode, I'm going to go to the Din Topo menu up at the top there, and then I'm going to click on the Detail Flood Fill. And now, pressing Shift, you can kind of just smooth things out, and everything should look a little bit more clean and connected. So going around the edges where everything overlapped, you can smooth things out now. I'm going to increase the speed of the video at this point and provide some more general commentary on what it is I'm doing. From this point on, it's going to be really kind of up to you how you want to style things. I don't want the video to be too long. I hope that was a good kind of base for you to get started in creating your own character. Here I'm creating the mouth. There is a very popular YouTuber, if you haven't heard of him yet, his name is Yan Sculpts. He has great videos on how to sculpt a mouth. I would highly recommend checking those out. Here I'm using the mask by pressing M, and so the black part that you see will not be affected by any brush that you use. It's particularly helpful around the mouth where you want to work on the lips separately. And you can press Ctrl I and you can see that the mask actually flips. With the crease brush and then holding Ctrl, you can kind of get that sharp line look. Creating a little heart shape in the middle of the lips also creates a kind of nice effect. Here I'm adding in some bony landmarks with the collarbone. This helps with kind of lining up the sternocleidomastoid, which is this kind of big long muscle that connects the collarbone to the back of the ear. And then kind of laying out the general musculature of the character. Definitely not an anatomy course here. What I'm doing is I'm basically using an image I found on Google. If you type in human écorche, it'll give you kind of a muscular map of the human body. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just kind of, with the clay strips brush, I'm laying down the musculature based on these maps. And as you can see, you know, especially with a stylized character, you just kind of lay out the general shapes and smooth it all out. You get a half decent result relatively quickly. This isn't a, you know, an ultra realistic human model, so I'm not too concerned on hitting exact proportions, but you know, using those human écorche images as reference, you can get half decent results, as you can see. Okay, so now I'm going to connect the eyelids to the head. I generally like to leave these to the end just because they can get a little bit finicky sometimes. So again, I'm just shift selecting the eyelids and then the head, pressing Control and plus on the numpad to use the Bool Tool add-on, and then applying all. Now you can see the eyelids are part of the head mesh. Everything is one now. And then going back into Sculpt Mode, turning on Din Topo, I'm going to increase the resolution just a little bit, and you're going to see in the bottom right that the vertex count does increase a little bit, so do be mindful. And then you can select Detail Flood Fill, and that should allow you to go in and smooth around the eyelids and make it look a little bit more natural. Adding another rounded cube to form the base of the hair. Decided to give him a man bun. A very large bun. More like a focaccia bun. Now I'm going to add some eyebrows. I'm going to go down to the mesh and then I'm going to add a single vert, and this should be available, I believe, under the extra objects add-on that we activated earlier. And then I'm going to turn on snap to face, project individual elements. You can see just by pressing G, the vertex will snap to the face of the closest object, in this case the head. I'm going to add a mirror modifier and then a shrink wrap modifier. And then with the eyedropper tool, I'm going to select the head. And this will just make sure that the vertices stay stuck to the head. If you make any adjustments in sculpt mode, the eyebrows will move alongside, which is nice. And now just extruding some of the vertices to form the shape of the eyebrow. Now going back across, try to keep the same number of vertices. So just selecting those 4 vertices and pressing F to create a face, and then doing that down the line. Now I'm going to create a little bit of a solidify sandwich. I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. And then I'm going to add a solidify modifier. I'm going to play with the thickness a little bit. Shade smooth. And then I'm going to add another slice of sub D bread to finish off the sandwich. So you have a subdivision surface modifier, a solidify modifier, and then another subdivision surface modifier below it in the stack. Okay, gonna add a mustache, gonna add in another capsule using the operator preset. Over to Sculpt Mode, into Dyn Topo mode, and then we're gonna detail flood fill. This makes it a little bit kind of nicer and easier to sculpt. So going over to the inflate brush, it's going to do exactly what you think, inflates. And then I'm going to use the snake hook brush, which is a fun little brush. You can use that to pull out the tip. And then now I'm going to speed up the video again. Lots of little tweaks and adjustments. Scrape brush, kind of flatten out the back. Rotating and moving into place. Adding a mirror modifier. I'm going to switch gears and start making some armor. Kind of had the idea that I would do kind of cool Viking style armor. I saw a cool video by CG Boost, I think it was. Very popular one from a few years ago. He did a Viking, had a kind of cool big neck piece. I thought, oh, I'll do something similar. But my guy ends up just looking like he's been in a car accident or is about to board a 9-hour flight to Thailand. So So this doesn't look as cool as CG Boosts, but I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes trying. Now to make a shirt, I'm just going to use the same method as the eyebrows and eyelashes. Snap to face, shrink wrap modifier. And basically just doing a very bad impression of retopology. Now I thought I would add some armor, so I'm tabbing into edit mode on the coat I just made. So I'm going to basically just steal some vertices. I'm going to select those vertices, press Shift D to duplicate, and then P and separate by selection. And then you're going to get a separate mesh basically that follows the same form as the shirt. So it's a kind of good way to kind of build armor on top of a character. Okay, so some very simple kind of extruding and insetting here to create a sort of medallion or armor piece. Control R to add in some edge loops to kind of tighten things up again. Okay, so now I'm going to add a sphere to form the goatee. And this just got a little R-rated. Working on that focaccia again. Okay, again, just stealing some vertices, Shift D to duplicate, and then P to separate. And there you have kind of a accent to the armor. Here I realize we have a big part of the torso that's not really going to show in the final render. So in order just to reduce the poly count, I'm going to go into Sculpt Mode, make sure the Dyn Topo method is off, and then press Shift and Control, and then left click. And you can create a lasso mask. And you can select the area of the torso that's not really going to be showing underneath the armor. And then go up to the mask menu and select Mask Slice and Fill Holes. And that'll remove a big part of the mesh and kind of reduce your poly count and maybe speed up your render times a little bit. Okay, so again, just making sure Dyn Topo was off. Shift, Control, left click to create the lasso mask. Select the area that you want to delete, and then go up to Mask, Mask, Slice, and Fill Holes. So you can see in edit mode real quick here, the distribution of vertices is a little bit wonky. It's not really even throughout the mesh. So to fix that, we're going to use the voxel remesher. So just going up to the remesh menu, selecting the eyedropper tool just to test the resolution. And we're going to go a little bit lower than what we have. I think it was about 0.05. And press remesh. And I'm just going to go through and do some more refinement now. Using the crease tool and holding Control kind of gives you that nice sharp line. Also the scrape tool is good for the stylized look. Flatten things. Going up to the base hair mesh, I'm going to remesh, and then using the clay strips brush, I'm going to create some channels here to make it look like hair being pulled back into a ponytail. Some scrape brush to flatten and give that stylized look. kind of make sure things flow and align nicely. It's an easy technique to kind of steal vertices, as I mentioned before. Tab into edit mode, select the vertices you want, and then Shift D and P and select separate by selection. You should have a separate mesh that takes the similar form. Okay, so adding color through the vertex paint mode. Vertex painting allows you to add some color and texture to high poly models without needing to retopologize or UV unwrap. It's a little bit quicker. Here I'm painting the eye really quickly and roughly using the same general techniques I cover in my texture painting an eye tutorial. Adding in some lowlights. Here I'm using curves to create some accents to the base hair mesh I have. Here I'm selecting all the hair curves and then converting to mesh. You can do this by pressing F3 on your keyboard and typing in convert and then selecting convert to. And then in the menu that pops up, select convert to mesh. And then with all the hair curves selected, you can add a mirror modifier and then press Ctrl L and then select modifiers, and that will apply the mirror modifier to all the hair curves. There you have it, a kind of quick overview on how you might go about sculpting a character bust like this. I hope it helped a little bit. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.